an update to members of the public as to exactly what is being done from the department side. This press conference will be chaired by myself, Crispin Currie, the ministry spokesperson. We are joined by Deputy Minister John Jeffrey. We are also then joined by Ms. Steve Litsike, who is also the NTT co-chairperson. We're joined by colleagues from the South African Police Services, Major General Matonsi, Major General Mogale, and Brigadier Podumo on the line. We also are joined by colleagues from the National Prosecuting Authority, Advocate Bonnie Currie, as well as we'll be joined by Advocate Rodney de Kock in due course. Over to you, Deputy Minister, and you can outline exactly what the department has been doing to date. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Currie, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be reading a statement. So let me start with that. South Africa is seen around the world as a leader in the area of legislative protection of the rights of people of different sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or sex characteristics, known as SOGI-esque for short, to equality. Only 9 countries' constitutions explicitly mention sexual orientation as a protected ground against discrimination, and South Africa is one of them and was in fact the first to do so. This also forms the foundation of our progressive legislative framework. Despite these constitutional and legislative protections of equality, our country has seen an upsurge in the number of attacks against particularly lesbian, gay, and transgender people. While Pride Month celebrations, that was in June, were underway in many parts of the world, South Africa was seeing a spate of attacks against the LGBTIQ plus persons in our country. These attacks are extremely concerning and put the dignity, well-being, and safety of all people of different sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or sex characteristics in South Africa at heightened risk. Individuals in these vulnerable communities continue to be subjected to hate crimes and gender-based violence. At the same time, we are also seeing allegations of homophobia and bullying of LGBTIQ plus learners at schools in our country. Unfortunately, this is not the first time in our democracy that this has happened. The National Task Team on the Rights of LGBTI Persons was established in 2011 by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development with the aim of strengthening government's ability to respond to the needs of LGBTIQ plus persons and to strengthen the capacity of civil society organizations to deliver related services. The NTT comprises of various government departments, Chapter 9 institutions like the Human Rights Commission, and civil society organizations. The National Task Team's Rapid Response Team, or RRT, tracks pending cases in the criminal justice system that have been committed against LGBTI persons and includes these cases in a tracking template. The NTT met yesterday and took note of the details of the crimes perpetrated against LGBTIQ plus persons. The NTT was informed that as at the 29th of June, 2021, there are 42 pending hate crimes cases on the template. And the provincial breakdown is from the Western Cape. There's 9 murder and 3 rape cases. Gauteng, 5 murder and 6 rape cases. Northwest, 3 murder and 1 rape case. Free State, 1 murder case. KZN, 5 attempted murder and 1 rape case. Mpumalanga, 1 murder and 1 rape. Limpopo, 3 murder cases. Eastern Cape, 3 murder cases. So of the 42 pending cases, 30 are for murder, 12 are for rape. Out of the 42 pending hate crimes cases, approximately 29 hate crime cases were reported from 2020 to date. Of these 29 hate crimes, 16 are on the court roll with remand dates, with the remaining 13 cases still under investigations. 8 cases have been finalized, some with significant sentences, such as, for example, life imprisonment for rape. That's a case from Davidton. 25 years for rape, Ikageng. 25 years imprisonment for murder, Umlazi. 14 years imprisonment for rape, Greytown in KZN. Some 14 cases have been closed as undetected due to lack of evidence, but may be referred to the National Prosecuting Authority to review the dockets. It must be highlighted that the cases on the template are being actively monitored, with government departments actively working with the SAPS, the National Prosecuting Authority, and civil society to ensure that these cases are thoroughly investigated, that arrests are made and prosecutions follow. At the same time, it's vital that survivors of such crimes receive the necessary support services. The crimes that are being perpetrated against the LGBTIQ+ persons can only be addressed if information is known to law enforcement agencies. Therefore, NTT members have been urged to provide any information they may have on these hate crime cases to the NTT. It was also agreed that rapid response team meetings will be held on a monthly basis, given the high incidence of hate crimes taking place across the country. Plans are also underway to have further strategic discussions on enhanced collaboration and interventions to promote and protect the rights of LGBTIQ+ persons. The National Task Team also considered the first draft of the revised National Intervention Strategy, or NIS. This strategy provides the framework that informs the functioning of the National Task Team to counter violence and discrimination that is grounded on sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and sex characteristics in the country. The National Intervention Strategy emphasizes the need to create awareness of the rights of LGBTIQ+ persons to equality, and to create a society which recognizes the needs and challenges experienced by LGBTIQ+ people and works together to resolve them. The intervention strategy is written with input from government and civil society and is periodically reviewed and updated since it was adopted in 2014, as well as in 2019. The LGBTIQ+ community, through the National Task Team, requested a workshop in December 2020 to review the intervention strategy to ensure that the activities of the strategy continue to meet the needs of LGBTIQ+ people within communities. While the NTT was initially created to respond to hate crimes against LGBTIQ+ people, the adoption of the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide National Strategic Plan requires that the National Task Team reconsider its intervention strategy in order to also integrate its responses to gender-based violence and femicide-related crimes against LGBTIQ+ people. As a result, the reviewed National Intervention Strategy, that's for 2021 to 2025, is an opportunity to use the NTT to also respond to gender-based violence and femicide in ways that expand access to broader human, socio-economic, civil and political rights to the LGBTIQ+ people in South Africa, amongst others. Just maybe two comments to make from myself. That was the statement. Our challenges are in implementation and changing societal attitudes in our communities. Changing societal attitudes is the only way to ensure that persons are not victims of violence or discrimination in their daily lives on the grounds of their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or sex characteristics. And then it is important that we work with civil society, and just to comment on that, the partnership between government and civil society is crucial if we want to successfully investigate and prosecute these crimes. Let us hold each other to account. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for that comprehensive outline of what government is doing. May I please hand over to Ms. Steve Litzike, if you want to make some remarks. It's also your opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to also indicate, thanks DM for expressing where the National Task Team is. I must say that this was a timely conversation. It's a conversation that brought different stakeholders at a multi-sectoral level to engage about the status, but also to reflect on what needs to be done. I must also indicate that, you know, from the call or clarion call that was made by civil society, not only just on the crisis that South Africa is faced with when it comes to murders and brutal killings of LGBTI persons, but also on the fact that there has been inactive participation of various departments in the National Task Team. And we've seen with the proactive approach taken by the Department of Justice, various departments, social development, basic education, women, and others, were then reappointed to participate and identified key focal persons who will participate in the committee, but also who would advance the work programmatically. I think what is key and what has always been most paining issue has been implementation, moving from talk to action. Ultimately, it's not only just about responding to LGBTI challenges, but it's really to prevent these barbaric acts and hold those who perpetrate them accountable. I think there's an urgency that is expressed by civil society and the LGBTI committee or organizations in this case to really call on governments to not be quiet, condemn acts, but also act accordingly. I think what is painful and what we want to see as the most important and effective way is the role of SAPS. SAPS needs to bring back confidence into the LGBTI community. We've seen various secondary discrimination that is happening, and that needs to be addressed. So I'm glad SAPS and NPA are here to even also recommit itself to advancing this. Indeed, what the Deputy Minister alludes to, our responsibility is not only just on the role of government. We have the responsibility to change the societal attitude, to work with religious leaders, traditional leaders, and members of society to change the attitude. So I think we have a recommitment, and that guarantee and resolutions by the National Task Team will help us advance what needs to happen. And it should never happen at national level, but at provincial and local levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Litsike. Quite correctly, we are joined by not just anyone from SAPS, but a special team from SAPS that deal with visible policing, forensics, and investigations. So we are really honored to have our SAPS colleagues on the line. I think then at this point, I'd then like to take questions from our colleagues in the media. I'll start off by taking 5 questions, Takalani, if we have, and then would then ask colleagues from SAPS and the NPA respectively to listen out for technical questions that would touch their scope of work and prepare themselves to answer accordingly. Takalani, over to you. Any questions from your side?
No, thanks, Crispin. So far, we don't have any questions from WhatsApp.
Okay. I also seem not to have any questions on my side, but I think it is important that we do give an opportunity in the meantime to our colleagues in the NPA to outline how they are approaching most of these matters and so that they can instill some level of confidence in the public as well as to how they go about doing their work in matters of this nature. I see we are struggling to get Advocate de Kock admitted as a participant as well. In the interim, then I would allow, I see Advocate Bonnie is really ready to and raring to go. So I'd allow her to then take the space. The floor is yours, Advocate Bonnie.
Yes, Crispin, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Now, the NPA has had the cases involving LGBTIQ as part of its gender-based violence and as part of its prioritization of cases involving our vulnerable groups as one of its key priorities for a while now. We have also participated in all the structures mentioned by the Deputy Minister, such as the NTT, such as the National LGBTIQ Rapid Response Teams, and then also provincially, for example, the Gender Justice Forum in provinces like the Western Cape. And so our role and our obligations in respect of the LGBTI community when it comes to these matters is to ensure successful prosecution of the cases, but also to track these cases through the system. Now, the tracking of the cases is very important. As the Minister stated, we have a list of cases that we are able to collate on a monthly basis, really. And that information we get from civil society, from SAPS, and from our courts. And that is very important. But what is also important about that list, and I'm glad the Deputy Minister alluded to the involvement of civil society, because often there are cases that are perhaps not identified as a case, a hate crime against an LGBTIQ person. And it is important for civil society to alert us so that we can either obtain the docket, guide the investigation, make certain prosecutorial decisions in respect of those matters. And that is going to be absolutely crucial going forward. Very importantly, we are also supposed to provide a victim-friendly environment. Now, we can do that. We have been doing that through our social context training of all persons that a victim would engage with at, for example, the courts. We have our court preparation officers at many of our courts throughout the country. We also provide the same type of social context training in respect of our prosecutors, so that they know what they are supposed to do, how they are supposed to approach these matters, the complexities that sometimes surround these cases. And so from the NPA side, we will continue to have that impact, and in fact increase our impact as we go forward. Public awareness around LGBTIQ is absolutely crucial. I believe that as these cases, and we've seen these awful cases, many of them murder, which shows the escalation that has already occurred in respect of LGBTIQ persons, the level of violence that has been perpetrated against LGBTQI persons. And so the need for awareness building around LGBTIQ has become crucial. And as the NPA, and in particular the soccer unit, we have LGBTIQ nodal points in all of the provinces. And their role is to ensure that we have, for example, awareness building at various places. We have just completed a round of anti-bullying or an anti-bullying campaign at various schools throughout the country. And part of that was, in fact, also addressing LGBTIQ, because many of our young LGBTQI persons are being bullied at school level. So we have started already in that way, addressing effectively, I think, going forward, how we will deal with LGBTIQ. So we urge civil society to continue working with us, alert us if there are cases, so that we can approach these cases in a particular manner, so that when we get to the sentencing stage, we are also able to place, aggravating circumstances before court to ensure that we are able to get the highest possible sentences for many of these cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Advocate Bonnie. Mr. de Kock has actually got a name change so that we were not aware of. He's actually on as CR answer, but it's actually Mr. de Kock. Over to you, Advocate de Kock.
Thank you very much, Crispin. I hope that you can hear me. The video
we can see you.
Doesn't seem to be connected. If they could possibly just, the host has stopped the video. That's what it's saying, if you want to see me. But in the meantime, just to confirm that in each division of the NPA and of the high courts, we have directors of public prosecutions. And it is the responsibility of each director of public prosecutions in our divisions to ensure that these very important cases are dealt with correctly by all prosecutors and investigators in those divisions. So this, in addition to what Advocate Currie-Gamwo has said, is another important feature in the way in which the MPA prioritize these matters, because the actual person responsible for the decision-making in respect of these matters is in the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And so in this way, we can ensure that there's also effective coordination within a province, and we can ensure that effective stakeholder coordination happens between the prosecution in the division and all the important stakeholders, including civil society. So again, to the extent that there are weaknesses in the way in which we are doing our work, we invite our civil society organizations to engage directly with us at the National Office of the MPA through our Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Office under the leadership of Advocate Currie-Gamwo, as well as at the provincial level through the respective directors of public prosecutions. And the MPA recommits itself to this important initiative and the work that needs to happen in this regard. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have 3 questions from Veronica of Eyewitness News. Well done. I see your videos after you're done speaking. And the questions used are 3 in the main, as I said. It says, can we detail how bill? Secondly, does the bill actually hold weight in preventing this violence against the same? South Africa on paper for protection of LGBTQI community, say to our neighboring countries and others on the continent that still deny many rights to this community. I think, Deputy Minister, this is within your domain, and you may proceed to answer some of them.
Yeah, Crispin, sorry, can you just repeat them? You were breaking up a bit when you were saying what the 3 questions were. Crispin, can you repeat?
The first question was, pull it up.
I think he's breaking because I also am struggling.
Crispin, maybe you can just WhatsApp them to me.
Now, colleagues?
You're audible now, but you might want to just WhatsApp them to me, but I think you're not audible to everybody. I think it's your side.
Okay. Okay. Again, so what's question was, how can we detail how far we are in implementing the hate crime and hate speech bill?
Okay, all right. I've got your WhatsApp and maybe just to respond. Look, the hate crimes, hate speech bill was introduced into Parliament in 2018. That was before the last elections. It was put out for public comment, but the decision from the previous portfolio committee, Justice Portfolio Committee, was not to proceed with it because they wouldn't be able to finish it before the elections. There is a problem, though, in terms of there are 2 provisions in the bill, or not 2 provisions in the bill, sorry. There are, one of the provisions is to create hate crimes, and these are crimes where if the motive is because of the group that you think the victim belongs to, or that they do belong to, but that's a motive, then it can be elevated to a hate crime, and a hate crime is more serious. That will make an impact, particularly for the less serious crimes, the assaults, because they will be elevated to a hate crime. But already at the top of the list, the murders, the rapes are already serious crimes. Then there's a provision for hate speech, which is a new law. Currently, people are being prosecuted under criminal injuria. Then there's provisions around taking, allowing, or not allowing of providing for victim impact statements. There's a sort of section 1 clause on prevention of hate crimes, that kind of thing. But the problem basically with the bill is on the hate speech provisions. There are 2 cases that were argued in the Constitutional Court. One of them was the Takalani case, which was argued last year, which was on homophobia. The other was the Masuku case, which was argued sometime earlier, which was on anti-Semitic comments. So basically, just the Portfolio Committee, because it's with them, and Parliament don't want to process the bill until the Constitutional Court has ruled in these issues. And it's something that I would agree with, because you can spend endless time debating whether something would be constitutionally permissible or not, only to find that the court then gives judgment a few days later where they actually define for you what is allowed and what isn't. So that's effectively where the bill is. So we are not at the implementation stage. The bill still has to be passed. However, that doesn't stop. I mean, the important issue is that all these cases, particularly the serious cases, the murders, the rapes, attempted murders, attempted rapes, need to be properly investigated. If there is provision, if there is a belief, if it is a hate crime, then the prosecutors need to lead evidence during sentencing, in aggravation of sentencing, that this was a hate crime, so that the person can get a more serious sentence. And we also then need to look at doing more as a society as a whole to prevent these crimes. The second question, I might have answered them. Does this bill actually hold weight in preventing the surge of violence against the same-sex community? Look, it's not just same-sex. We made reference to sexual orient. I mean, there's the LGBTI, which is lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, intersex, etc. We've been using the terminology of people of different sexual orientation. That's people of the same sex who love each other. Gender identity would be the identity of the person, what identity they see themselves as having. Gender expression would be the gender that they express, and sex characteristics would relate particularly to intersex people. We've got good laws. Violence against anyone is a crime. It's a crime to hit somebody. It's a crime to abuse somebody. The problem is the laws are not implemented. And I think what is important with the current surge of violence that you described is, firstly, as I'd mentioned, the crimes that have been committed are properly investigated. People are arrested, people are prosecuted, people are convicted, and people then realize, the general public out there realize that to commit a crime like that is going to lead to consequences. But the other is to engage with trying to identify which sectors in our society are actually getting motivated by this homophobia, and looking at strategies to try and change their attitudes. And then the issue of what do we say to our neighboring countries? Well, look, violence against, there has been a resolution from the African Commission on Human and People's Rights that violence against people of the LGBTIQ plus sector communities is wrong and needs to be dealt with. We as South Africa support the rights of people to be different as far as their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, sex characteristics. And that's something that we need to be saying to the rest of the continent and the rest of the world, we need to respect these rights of people who are different. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I'm just minded perhaps to also give an opportunity to Advocate Currie-Gamwo and Advocate De Kock, and as well as our colleagues from SAPS, to give a brief but technical and simple description of how we go about prosecuting crimes of this nature, in spite of us not having the hate crimes bill legislated yet, so that we are able to illustrate to the public that in spite of these bills not being fully legislated yet, the work is being done. Advocate Currie-Gamwo.
Thank you, Crispin. I'm not sure if Advocate De Kock would like to go first. Could I just check?
Thank you, Advocate Currie-Gamwo. Please proceed, seeing that this relates directly to actual prosecutions and our formulation of those charges that we normally, as a general conception, be able to put in these particular matters. So with that background, perhaps you should just deal with those issues quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Even without the hate crimes bill, if we are able to have all of those facts before us as the prosecution, and that is why it is so crucial that all the background information is in fact contained in the docket. Because a docket can, when it arrives at the prosecution, it can simply say that A stabbed B. We would not even necessarily know that it is a person from the LGBTIQ community, for example. And so we then, through proper guidance of the investigation, that may or may not come to light. And this is where that engagement with SAPS is going to be absolutely crucial. SAPS being able to identify that this is actually a hate crime from the onset. And that will be through procuring the statements of the witnesses on the scene. And if that is in the docket, from the prosecution side, we will then, because we are busy we have trained our people already on how to identify these hate crimes, we should be able to, where necessary, guide the investigation further so that we have a solid case that when we place it before court, we can say to court, this is not just a murder. It is, in fact, a hate crime. So, sans the hate crime bill being passed, as I said before, the additional information which we place before court will be for purposes of aggravation of that sentence at a later, at sentencing stage. So, Crispin, if that is how I understood the question correctly, for me, it is that aggravation that will be absolutely crucial going forward. So that, but again, all of this is influenced by how we approached the matter from the onset, from the investigation part of it, right through to how we guided the investigation and how we present this case to court as a hate crime. To ensure that the court does in fact say this is a hate crime.
Thank you very much, Advocate. May I open the floor to any of our colleagues from SAPS to provide a technical but simple explanation of how you approach hate crimes in the current environment? Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, DM Chair, General Mogale from Detectives. The colleagues, especially from NPA advocates, have already alluded to the point. We jointly work on the matters. During our investigation, we ensure that we consult with the NPA where we are going to be given a guidance in terms of how to deal with these matters and the formulation of charges. So as a team, we make sure that the correct charges are formulated, necessary statements leading to that effect are taken, so as cases can be placed on a roll and be positively adjudicated. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brigadier, Major General. I think then, colleagues, in the absence of any other questions, Takalani, from your side, I think we can then draw this press conference to a close. And I really thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.